Hi there everyone, this is Cloud Chief, and today I wanted to talk about being a team player. And while this is mostly going to be focusing on tanks, this is something that each role could take something away from. The team's production is always more important than your individual statistics. So you want to make sure that you're doing whatever you can to help your overall team's damage or whatever your team's doing to make their job as easy as possible. And if everyone else is doing that, it makes for a nice, easy, and smooth run. I've also seen lots of tanks who mainly focus on just strength gear and trying to do as much damage, but then they're busy getting their butts kicked and the healer's having a hard time keeping them up, where I've seen if you got a tank who can stay up longer, then the healer can actually do damage, and that's helping the production overall. I've been doing some testing lately, and I've actually seen if you have a healer who can do a decent amount of damage with nuking, you're actually going to get better damage numbers and kill mobs faster if you're in defensive gear than if you are in strength gear, because you're going to be doing damage regardless, and the healer is actually able to do a lot more damage. So it does actually make a difference. But then there's also times where you're with a group who's going to have a healer who's not going to nuke at all, and in that case you would want to be trying to do more damage. So you want to be aware of what your teammates are doing, and you want to be aware of what's going to help the team the most. Next thing I want to touch on is making sure you're not ignoring hazards or mechanics. I've seen a lot of different people, whether it be tanks or just DPS, that will ignore hazards or AoEs that are going to come in just to try and get more damage in. While that runs the risk of wiping the party, it also is making it more work for your healer, and it's also cutting down the time when your healer could be doing additional damage to help push everything down, which gets back to the whole point that you want to make sure you're being a team player. You want to make sure you're playing your best. You want to avoid damage, whether you're tank or DPS or even healer, as much as possible, so that way you're able to push out as much damage as possible. So make sure you're not ignoring mechanics and you're not ignoring potential damage, and you're trying to avoid it whenever possible. Make sure you're keeping an eye on your team's MP, HP, and TP. These are all very important, obviously, depending on what role they're playing. But if you have ways of helping to get your party's MP or TP or HP up, be sure to do it. I know a lot of classes have the ability to cross-class mantra, which helps healing, and should do that. Ninjas should be tossing out goad whenever they can to try and help give TP, whether it's another melee or if it's even a tank. Just make sure you're keeping an eye out and giving the right abilities to who needs it. By doing that, you're helping out your overall team's ability to play their role right, and that will help make the run go that much smoother. Also, be sure that you're popping defensive cooldowns whenever you can, especially when you're playing tank. If you're on a boss or even just fighting a mob and you know they're getting ready to do a move that's going to be bringing in a bunch of damage, especially bosses that are readying certain moves, you can go ahead and pop a cooldown in response to this, and that'll help mitigate damage, which will just make it much easier for the rest of your party and allowing your healer to do damage. Also, make sure that you are doing the mechanics that are required for whatever dungeon or whatever run you're doing. 14 has a lot of different mechanics in it, and I've seen a lot of groups that want to just try and burn the boss while ignoring mechanics. While you can do this with some groups, majority of the time you're just going to win by doing the mechanics, and just trying to burn it, you always run the risk of wiping because the mechanics were ignored and you just have a high amount of damage coming in. So make sure you're ready to do that, and also try and be on the same page so you know what to do. If you need to hit a switch and you're near it, make sure you're able to do it and you're ready to do it. It's those type of things that'll end up making the difference in a run. Next thing I want to touch on is making sure you are listening and communicating with the rest of your team. You want to be sure you're deciding who's doing what in the party. Perfect example I can have for this was recently I was doing Copper Bell Hard, and the tank wanted to run around with the bombs on the second boss and hold the bombs to make sure that they were going to blow up on the boss, not thinking that any of the DPS in the group could handle it. Well, the funny thing is, the very first time the bomb's going to go off, the mob isn't even moving, and one of the melees put it down right next to it, and the tank runs over and picks it up just to take the damage. He wasn't being a team player, and he also didn't communicate that he wanted to do that. Plus, he was just completely ignoring the fact that he didn't have hate on the boss, which was just making it harder for everyone else. So make sure you know your role. If you want to do something different and try something different, make sure your team's aware of that so they can respond accordingly. And make sure you're picking up ads and boss fights and those type of things. Don't just try and ignore everything and just focus on the boss, because that's just going to cause problems. Make sure you're communicating and being clear what it is that you're doing for your team. And lastly, just be aware of whether your team is ready. Look out in case someone's in a cutscene. You know, be aware if someone says they're gonna have to AFK for a few minutes in the chat. Also be aware if someone's weakened or completely out of TP or MP. Just know what's coming up and whether your team's ready for it or not. Because going and pulling when your team's completely out of, you know, TP and MP, then you're not going to be able to do anything, and you're not going to be able to, you know, clear out the mobs, and you're running a high chance of wiping. But by making sure everyone on the team's ready to go and knows what to do, then you're just going to make sure the run goes smooth. I hope you got some value out of this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit a like, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, and may you have success in all you do.